Welcome to the Brownsville Minute, a community-conscious conversation and a platform that provides information, wellness, love, and unity all on a digital platform. And our goal is to try to make sure that our community residents are informed, conscious, and that we are connecting the dots on a virtual platform. The Brownsville Minute is designed for everyone. Please join us with the Brownsville Minute. Good evening, good people. Welcome to season 2 of the Brownsville Minute. We are back and so excited to have you join us this evening. My name is Anita Pierce and I am the host, the producer. I will not be moderating today because I have a group of wonderful ambassadors that will be working with us and giving us some good information today. For those who are just joining us for the first time, welcome. For those who I've missed you all, and it's been a while. I took a little bit of a break so that we can come back refreshed, revised, and bringing new and more positive information to you. The Brownsville Minute is a platform where we have conscious and made conscious efforts and conscious decisions that we are going to provide information, love, and unity all sprinkled through the platform. We have been behind the scenes. This now makes a year that we've actually been in this pandemic. So I would be remiss if I would not take a moment of silence for those who have gone before us as a result of us being in this pandemic. So I want to just take a little bit of moment just to honor those who have gone on before us as we continue during this time. So thank you for that and honoring that space. The Brownsville Minute is a platform where we have conscious conversations about the issues that impact residents of East Brooklyn, with a targeted focus in Ocean-Hill Brownsville. Within this platform, we gear information with you, the resident, in mind about topics that are important to us all. The community as a whole has decided that we will own our narrative, which is ownership, wealth building, and building a network, an acronym that came from one of our community partners at Central Brooklyn EDC. To join us today for a dynamic discussion and also join us and connect with us on our newly designed platform, a website that was created as a result of all that's happening within our community. Please check out www.brownsvillebk.org. I'm actually going to put this down at the bottom because it is a website that has been created for community. You can find all that's happening. You can be a contributor to that particular website. And so we hope that as it continues to develop, that you're providing active feedback for this website. And in addition to the website, we ask that you stay tuned and please support all of the localized efforts that are happening related to our community. So enough about me. I'm just excited to be back here with you all. What I am gonna do is share a few community announcements, because we do have a number of items that are transpiring within our community. And so I'm just going to take a moment to share some community announcement with you. Stay tuned. So yes, as you can see, we have a lot that is happening within the community. For those who may have missed it, we will do it on replay again towards the end of the broadcast. And just so you know that we have some more additional information, there's a number of community-based organizations that are hiring. The Brownsville Community Justice Center is hiring. They have a number of opportunities that do exist, particularly within the center that is in Brownsville. So please, the website is listed there. It's scrolling down at the bottom. And we will also post the job opportunities that do exist on the Community Board 16 Facebook page. So if you know anyone who is looking for very unique and different opportunities, the Brownsville Community Justice Center is hiring. Please check their website out. They're at Center for Court Innovation and .applytojob.com. So I'm going to let that scroll a little bit. But I can tell you that I am really excited, because guess who is not moderating this evening? This woman, not moderating. And so just to give you a little bit of background about, what the Brownsville Minute has grown into. So a part of providing community information and resources to the community also providing a little bit of entertainment. It has turned into an opportunity where young people, I have the good fortune of developing young people to really have them understand the importance of what it is to do a live broadcast. It is not just picking up a phone and showing bits and pieces of your life. There is a whole art form, what it takes to really develop and do a live broadcast. It is something that takes a lot of practice, but I am really proud of my first set of interns that have worked with me over the past couple of weeks. They have tolerated me. They have, been really patient with me. But tonight they are here to present their work on a topic that they selected. If you notice the videos, there's one that was shown in the beginning. They are the creative force behind this all. And I'm just there gloating and going to be in the background. So without further ado, I would like to bring to the table our 11375 team ambassadors who are going to be walking you through this evening's topic, which will focus in on the impact of social media on the minds of young people. I think this was particularly relevant to me. So even though I'm not young in age, I am still, one that is connected to social media just as much as we all are. So I think this is a very relevant topic. I hope that for those who are joining us live, that you have your questions ready, because we have some really awesome and amazing thought leaders who have, were very generous enough to support these young people in this process. So enough of me. I'll be back with you all later. I want to introduce Ukai and also Maza, who will be leading you this evening's discussion. And so I'm going to say, so long, folks. Bye-bye. Take it away, guys.
Hello, my name is Wakai, and I am currently a junior at A-Tech High School, which was once called O.W.N. And this evening, we will be discussing the impact of social media on the minds of youth and adults. We will be speaking with a few subject matter experts to help guide us through this topic and to provide a few tips and tools to help guide us through this process.
Hi, good evening. My name is Madison, and I am currently a senior at A-Tech High School. I will be co-moderating the session tonight, and I would like to thank you all for the support during this broadcast. Social media has dramatically changed the way we communicate with one another. As humans, we are designed to interact with one another in person and not just behind the screens.
Social media is a very powerful tool that can be used to motivate people towards an action in making social changes. It provides a platform for our generation to be heard on things that matter the most to us. Tonight, we will take a deeper look into this topic with a few experts.
Please welcome our speakers with us, who is Madison, Felicia, and Dr. Denise Agosto. And we would like you to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Well, my name, as said, is Felicia Harper. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I've been in this field now for, I will say officially for 11 years, but unofficially for 15. I started working with young people. I still work with young people within the school and in the community. I have a history with reunification, with the legal system, and engaging in restorative practices. So all of that has supported the work that I do in my private practice.
Hi, everybody. My name is Denise Agosto. I'm a professor and the director of the Masters of Science in Information program at Drexel University in Philadelphia. So we're a bit south of you guys. And this is my 20th year on the faculty at Drexel University, which makes me feel very old. My research focuses on young people, teens especially, how they use social media and other information technologies to communicate and support their daily lives.
So, thank you, for all introducing yourselves. We will be asking you some questions about social media impact and get your insight/perspective on the topic. So the first question we would like to ask you is, what does research say about the connection of social media and mental health?
Well, there's a few connections, right? Because this mental health is such a big umbrella and there's many different categories. So if we talk about like what does it say, it impacts mental health. Yes. So there's research saying that it can positively impact one's mental health depending on your age, but it can also negatively impact your mental health. So something that researchers, and I'm sure Dr. Augusto can elaborate, is what they're noticing is that like within the generation, like baby boomers and some generation Xers, is that they're benefiting, right? Because they're able to connect and find long lost friends from high school and learn games. And so they're almost like making these new connections with their neurons and feeling alert. However, on the other scale, with young people like yourself, Generation Z and millennials, it's starting to impact other parts of our mind. So, like in regards to mental health, like our wellness in managing our anxiety, right? So, constantly scrolling and the impulsivity around that. Depression, right? We see this a lot with Instagram and the comparison. The APA, American Association of Psychology, talks about this, how young people and teenagers are about 13 to 66% likely to be depressed just by being on Instagram consistently. So there's so much information that's coming out of like our interaction, and it's still fairly fresh in the spectrum of like research. And I feel old because I'm like, I remember when what was it, Black Planet and MySpace came out. So that was like the origin. So we're still finding out more about like the long-term impact, and I think your generation and millennials will get more outcomes of like the beginning of the introduction of social media, um, and the long-term effects of how it lasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Really important points there. It's also important to say that there is no one finding from the research, but rather the research suggests that there's a great continuum of how social media impacts people. And we want to also realize that we can't categorize people by age or by demographic group. There's great individuality within every group. So social media, like most things, has its benefits and its drawbacks, as Felicia said, and it impacts people very differently. Also, social media is not really that new in that it simply echoes behaviors that exist in the offline world. So, if you look at bullying activities, for example, we see that certain kids are at high risk of bullying, and these are the same kids who are high risk online. Social media is not a separate world, but a continuation of our offline world into online venues. But the shorter answer is the research is very mixed. It shows there are benefits and concerns that we have with social media. So healthy, intelligent use is always important so that we can maximize the benefits and reduce some of the negatives.
Right. And with that, going into the next question, what makes psychology accurate enough to make data that reveal positive or negative impact on someone based on what they are playing or using on social media?
I am not a psychologist. That's not my area. So I think Felicia should answer that one. I could talk about other areas of science.
So just for paraphrasing purposes, I want to make sure I understand the question. So you're saying, how does, I guess, the field of psychology deem like almost like ownership or understanding of the mental health component in relations to social
Yeah.
media?
Yeah. So like
Um,
how, with that research that people find, how does that like show the positive and negative of someone that uses social media?
okay, so like how it, okay, I understand now. So there's a lot of different pieces to it, right? So I think one part is it depends on the psychology in itself is pretty big, right? So is it the functionality? So like how someone functions, right? What's their cognitive ability to retain information? So like cognitive psychologists, behavioral psychologists. So how does engaging on social media impact how we respond to the world in real time, right? So there's all part of the reason why this is like encompassed under psychology is because there's so many parts of the brain, right? Like it's not, you have the memory, you have the emotional piece, and all of that impacts how we behave as human beings. So I think that's why, not to say that psychologists or mental health is like the full encompassing umbrella, but I think part of it is just because of how the mind functions, right? So that's, it can work in different ways. Did I answer your question? I want to make sure, because I feel like there's so many pieces to that.
No, it does.
Okay.
It does answer the question, don't worry. And like, how about Dr. Agosto, since like, just like your take on it, even though it's not your field?
Oh, I couldn't weasel out of the question. I think the way to answer is to say that there are many different fields that are currently studying impacts of social media. Certainly psychology is one, and it's one of the larger ones, but it's studied now really across the various social science and even some of the humanities and biological science disciplines. My discipline, for example, is information science. We study how people interact with information, how they use information devices. We're not going to do the kind of cognitive studies you might see that Felicia's more familiar with. Rather, we're going to try to understand how do people express themselves on social media? What are their attitudes towards social media? And how does social media play a role in their lives? So the important point here is really that social media are studied across different disciplines: computer science, psychology, education. Those are some of the big ones.
All that being said, and mostly ties into the next question, how would one begin to retrain our minds to really understand, read body language, facial expressions, or vocal inflections if we only communicate via social media or text?
You want me to take that one first?
Oh, yes, sure.
You guys ask hard questions. I think historically, if we look back, we can see that this is just something that humans do naturally. Social media is a new kind of technology, but it comes from a long line of other technologies. If you look at old writing from when telephones first came out, there's incredibly pervasive negative narrative. Only ugly people will use telephones. Nobody will ever go outside again now that we've invented the telephone. If you look at these narratives and you take away the dates, there are a lot of the exact same things that we say today about social media. So as an eternal optimist, I think my suggestion would be that people will adapt and readjust to different communication modes as they continue to come along and down the pike. Now, this is not to say that we can't use social media in intelligent and safe ways or in negative and unintelligent ways, but human beings adapt as communication and technology naturally evolves.
So, that's a great point. So what psychologists and mental health providers are realizing, and I think one is generational. So I don't want to put all the blame on social media, right? Because that's like not fair. Is that your generation was the first group to be introduced to social, like scrolling and touching screens. And so part of not having maybe the same type of social cues that myself and Dr. Agosto might have is because we grew up with different technologies, right? So I think with that specific thinking in mind is that we have to be a little bit more purposeful. And like when we engage with social media, recognizing that it's partial part of like that person's life. It's not every single thing, right? And so the struggle is that we're learning that young people are having some difficulty differentiating, like this is the best pieces of this person's life that they want to share with the world, but it's not everything, right? It's like the person's yearbook. And we don't want to put not so great things on there, even though there's ways to put not positive things on there with a way of integrity. That's a skill that young people have to learn in general, right? So part of it is recognizing not everything is real. being compassionate to oneself. And then when you are around people, to put the technology away and be present, like to honor that. And the beautiful thing that's coming out of such a scary time, this pandemic, is that what I've learned in my practice is that young people are craving. It's actually really nice. They're craving the desire to engage with their friends and hang out and not be glued to the screen, because you have to not just do it socially, but it's part of your academic world. So it's no longer as much fun. So that's what I would say the beginning is, to recognize it for what it is. Like Dr. Agosto said, it's a part of an extension to connect, but it's not every part. And there's something nice about talking to someone. And that's how you pick up on like the social cues, like that person likes it. Oh, they really don't like it.
And also, as technologies continue to evolve, we do seem to be moving more toward real-time interaction and even verbal communication. Is anybody familiar with Clubhouse? I haven't
No.
used it. I've only read about it.
Yeah.
Felicia, have you ever used it? I haven't used it.
I've gone on it once.
Ooh.
And it's interesting. I do think it definitely is a throwback to you
Chat.
would know that. Yes, that's what it's literally like a chat from like an AIM chat days. It's just now you can hear everyone's voices. So that's actually another real-time way to access people.
So in 2020, Apple introduced Clubhouse. As of yet, it's pretty small. It's an app that's only available for iPhone, but there's currently an Android model in development. Right now, it only has about 700,000 users, but its innovation is that it is social media for real-time voice conversation organized around different subjects and topics. I haven't used it. I've literally just read about it online in the New York Times. But I think it's an important indication that people are craving voice communication and real-time interaction. And perhaps it indicates that as social media continue to develop and deepen, we will head more toward authentic communication and face-to-face communication online. Something to look out for anyway.
Right, and then like how you guys said that voice communication is very important. That goes into a lot of things that younger generation do nowadays, which is like online gaming and using a lot of like different social media platforms. And so the next question would be, with the use of social media and online gaming, how can one deteriorate their brain power and will?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert in gaming, but the one thing I do know that the research around that is it's very mixed and it continues to evolve. I would say it's in the same bucket as social media. I think sometimes, depending on a researcher's bias or just a person reporting, can vilify gaming. But it has, I think when we didn't know, when it was new, I think it was like, oh, people are going to respond to it like it's real and go into the world. I think now we know that's a little different. But it's not really about the content, it's about the actual stimulation. That's what we're learning, right? So it's not just, it's the screen time. And so making sure that we give ourselves space. So yeah, I think we have a better understanding that you just need to have boundaries. So you have different types of interaction with the world outside of the screen.
Yeah.
I think it's a little shocking to say deteriorate your brains. Oh my gosh, it's like we flipped into a sci-fi movie. In fact, there's a lot that's really good to gaming. The communication and then interaction to gaming. You see lots of kids who are playing a game, but the real purpose of the gaming is for the social interaction communication in another channel or a part of that game that's going on, as opposed to the game itself. So you can't just say video games are dangerous or video games are bad. In fact, video games are like most things. They're fantastic when they're used intelligently and in moderation. It would also be a problem if you saw a child who was spending 22 hours a day sitting in a closet reading a book. Same thing. It would be dangerous for a kid to be spending 22 hours a day actually just sitting in a closet, regardless of what they're using. So social media has much that's good, but it needs to be used, as Felicia said, with boundaries and carefully. But we have this very negative prevailing narrative that is making people think that video games are far more evil than they are. Also, video games themselves are not monolithic. There are thousands and thousands of them. They vary by format, structure, content, and tone. So you can't really say that video games are damaging people's brains, but rather you can say people are using video games for many different purposes: entertainment, education, communication, and socialization. Much of this purpose is useful and healthy if it's done with moderation and intelligently. So really, I think what I propone above all is thoughtful use of media.
That was a good question. Kaya, like, I'm going to share this with my mother. I saw your
taking
eyebrow
sodas
go
too. Yeah. Okay. Well, next question is there legislation that we should consider to minimize the risk and exposure of what is presented on social media and on the news?
I can try to talk about that one, yeah. In the United States, we don't have federal legislation that determines what can and cannot be posted on social media. In fact, what we have is a de facto situation in which platform owners determine what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And like any companies or organization, platform owners have different people who are influencing them. Sometimes it's advertisers, sometimes it's users, whatever. So the way the system runs now is it's pretty much the platform owners who are making these decisions. And we don't have agreement in our society who should make the decisions. Should it be the government who determines what's appropriate for online use? Do we want simply free speech regardless of effects and impact? Do we want each society of users themselves to determine who can use social media and what can be posted? As of yet, we have no societal agreement. Several of the platforms are, however, experimenting with community users in policing each other and trying to determine what's safe and what isn't safe to post online. The most recent is Twitter, and I've completely forgotten the name of the program. Is it Twitter or Facebook? I was just reading about this the other day. And they have just a small sample now of people who are looking at content within their community and policing, saying this is appropriate, this isn't appropriate. Unfortunately, it's not working very well. Rather than people flagging information that is dangerous or cruel, mostly people are flagging information that doesn't agree with their own political viewpoints. This is a long way of saying, as a society, we haven't yet determined what information is appropriate to be online and who, either people or institutions, should have the power to police social media.
So that's a great point. I think the hope is that we're going to, I think within the next decade, I think it will be monitored in a more systemic way, either by state or federal government, because there's now new stuff coming up where people are saying really harsh things that's impacting folks' mental health, and it leads to suicide. And parents and families want to hold a system or the companies like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter accountable, right? Because what happens is someone says something, because we're used to some folks having disconnections between just being real, they'll egg on comments that are not okay, and then the person does something, right? That's online bullying. But then who's behind these screens? Who do we hold accountable? The person that's saying it, or Facebook, Instagram, so these bigger companies that are providing this platform. So I do think in time it will change, because it's just impacting folks' mental health.
Right, and like exactly what you said, Felicia, like with online bullying and cyberbullying and stuff, a lot of people get trauma from that because of the content that's put out. And automatically the next question would go to, what tools can one use to help us minimize exposure from social media trauma?
So that's a layered one, right? Because we don't ever know what people are going to post. We don't know until we're engaging with it, right? So I think the first part of it is knowing what your triggers are. And the struggle being a teenager, you usually don't know until you react, right? And then you receive information like, oh gosh, that impacted me. And hopefully you have someone that you trust that you can unpack all of that with. So part of it is knowing what's triggering you, knowing your trauma, and the struggle with that is usually, and Dr. Agosto and I will probably connect to this, you don't recognize what your trauma is usually until you're an adult. And so what typically happens is that young people end up interacting and escalating it, and it makes it more intense. So part of it is if it doesn't feel good, don't engage. It's that simple. So because I don't want to make it over clinical, right? Is that if it doesn't feel good, don't engage. And so we start with like, if you're on Instagram and you're like, oh my gosh, they're always posting this stuff. Oh my gosh, is that a sub? Mute. Unfollow. And it doesn't mean that you're being a bad friend or you're not supporting the person. It just means what they're posting is really just impacting you, right? And it's not, maybe they're just not being sensitive. And so really being in control of your mental health and honoring what doesn't feel good, because it's going to be different for everyone. I might be okay looking at someone that got into Harvard or got into MIT. And then another person's like, oh my gosh, I can't look at that because I didn't get into any of those schools and I applied. So mute.
Yeah, that's true.
And absolutely, absolutely, I agree. And also, I'd say the biggest tool is not a tool at all, but other people. That conversation and discussion is discussing issues. Young people need someone to talk to, some sort of trusted confidant. And that can do a lot toward diffusing stress and upset. So then we find sometimes students are alone, and that's when we need to make personal connections and human connections. And we need people checking on kids to make sure they have someone to talk to. As of yet, I don't think we have very good tools through artificial intelligence to really identify hate speech and damaging speech, even though there's many, many tools currently under development. The best tool we have is conversation, talking with trusted adults and mentors.
Yeah. And just to add to that, as two young people, facilitating this, I always say, you guys have really good instincts, teenagers. This is when it starts to bubble up. And then the hope is to hold on to that as an adult. If you see something that seems off, it probably is. Like if someone says something online, you're like, oh, that's odd. Even if it's odd for attention seeking or odd, like that's just not their character, I would encourage you to trust that and reach out to them. And if you're not friends with them, because sometimes there's a friend of a friend of a friend, you reach out to the person that has some type of connection with them, because it makes all the difference in them getting support, because we don't know what's going on behind the screens.
Okay. So
Yeah.
all you guys really saying is really tied into the next question, which is how can parents or caregivers who child post various things really check in to see if their child is okay?
I would say foundationally, just try to, I would hope that there's a foundational relationship, right? And this is outside of social media, is that you have a relationship with your child, even when you're, parents will be annoying. That's their job. I just have to say that if they're not annoying, they're not doing their job. So that's just to put that out there. So if outside of the annoyance component, right, is that you have a really good relationship. And so it's asking questions, but listening, right? And knowing that your teenager is going to do things that you're not excited about, but as long as it's not dangerous, it's okay. And I'm a big believer in teaching my parents that kids have to make healthy and fair mistakes. I know it's like, what? Like they have to. If they don't make errors, then they will not learn. And they're also going to feel shame and not share it. Right. So the hope is that you've built this rapport. And if not, let's say you don't have a report and you're ready to start anew, is do it with activities that you do naturally as a family. So if they're already helping you prep in the kitchen, use that as an opportunity to talk to them about like what's going on, like how's that Zoom class going, or just talk about things. And eventually you guys open up. You can be a little hard at first, but if you're persistent with that annoyance, you will unfold once the responsiveness is with no shame and it's without judgment. And I know sometimes as a parent and an adult, that's difficult.
Also, I want to say that it's really important that you frame conversations really positively and not as scare tactics or in negative language. In research that we've done with teenagers, we've tried to understand their attitudes about online safety and online security. And we've studied how teenagers react to public school education dealing with internet safety. And across the country, in different settings, we always find the same thing. The education on internet training is pretty lousy. The schools are couching it in terms of scare tactics. They're saying, don't go online. You're going to get hurt. It's dangerous. Stay offline. And this message just doesn't resonate well with teens. Much better is honest conversation and explaining that there are many benefits to social media just as there are drawbacks. This means that we're talking about benefit and risk analysis, and kids are responsible enough to make these choices. So a basic trusting relationship with adult is important, and framing things more positively on a basis of trust rather than scaring people and distrust. Also very compelling is sharing stories, as a parent saying, I have trouble with these issues too. When we look at the research, it's not just teenagers who are finding stress online. It's also littler kids, it's parents, it's grandparents. This is across the age. It's not just kids who have trouble telling what is misinformation and what is correct information. It's across age groups. So sharing that you have these same issues as well also makes the conversation more real and more trusting.
Thank you. And one last question is, can social media start to change the outlook on society through what they put out?
I think it is already. It's happening, right? I think social media has done some amazing things like exposing young people about places to travel to and professions. And so I think it's a gateway or access point for people to just see something outside of their area or their perspective. I think it's going to shift like everything else. It's going to evolve, but I think it's already happening.
Yeah, social media has fantastic ability to broadcast messages and really can bring about positive social change. So when we say big change in social media, in many ways, we're just bringing old forms of communication into digital formats. But what's different is the immediacy, the reproduction fidelity, that you can just reproduce information accurately and share it, and the massive reach of audiences. We can go online and post something that within 5 minutes, literally millions of people can see. This is new to history and new to society. So these communication forms enable much larger groups of attention and much more immediate attention, and it can be used for positive and social good. We saw some of that in the Black Lives Matter movement, which really increased in 2020, and hopefully will continue to gain strength. But we do see that social media can lead to positive political change, particularly, as well as social change when it's harnessed for good.
If you guys don't have anything else to say, thank you so much for coming here and joining us today and answering a lot of the questions and putting out your perspective for us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. I learned so much from you, Felisa. You were fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I loved listening to you as well. You guys did an amazing
Hi,
job.
Maza. You guys are great. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to just check through to see if there are any questions live from our audience. So again, I want to thank you, Dr. Denise, and also Felicia, for sharing your expertise. I'm just scrolling through some of the folks who are actually watching live. And there is one question that did come up about the different disparities that come up as it relates to social media related to different populations, different communities, and wanted to see if you would be willing to elaborate your thoughts or provide some thoughts about the disparities that does exist. So I can start with either one who wants to jump in.
I'm going to lean into you, Dr. Agosto, because I'm still thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, we see that human communication has moved online. Human communication is not new, but it's translated to new formats. And with this transfer of communication from in-person to online, we also see the transfer of disparities and power differences in diversity, equality, and inclusion. In some cases, digital media even exacerbates these power differences because it's so strong and can reach so many people so quickly. Again, we need to talk about these issues, particularly diversity, equity, and inclusion. Perhaps the best example we have seen is education during the pandemic. We saw many schools across the country and even across the world. I can't remember the number, but it's something like 2 billion school children across the world were suddenly put into new educational formats online, and they hadn't ever been schooled online before. We saw a broadening and exacerbation of inequity in online education. Schools that had less money and fewer resources and bigger equity issues had a more difficult time of transferring online. So we saw an increase of this gap of learning. As is always the case, you can turn it around and say there are positives. You could say that social media can be maybe the great answer and help us solve issues of diversity and equity inclusion. But as of yet, much of what we're seeing are these pre-existing power structures transferred into online venues.
Felicia, you want to add anything?
No, that was perfect.
That was
I
perfect.
agree.
I like that. She said that was perfect. No ads. So I don't see any additional questions that are in the chat. And I'm just going to give a few minutes because sometimes where one is typing. But I want to say that I am having like a beaming proud moment. And I just want to thank Dr. Denise and also Dr. Felicia for, just again, sharing your level of expertise. I was sitting backstage just taking notes because I have a bubbling 6-year-old. And yeah, that is a whole nother era of scrolling that I'm learning to try to keep her away from, but she's winning. And being that we're in this virtual space of learning, it is a process where I am now adjusting and also combining some of the things that I learned the old school way versus the way that she's learning so that she can stay current instead of, asking me why I don't have my own social or Facebook page at 6. So that's another story. and my team is laughing because she's popped in on some of our team meetings, and it's just been very wild and very interesting debate that I'm having with a 6-year-old. So on that note, I didn't note any additional questions from our live audience. And again, I am extremely grateful for your time and willingness to be able to share and provide us information about how we can be better stewards of social media. And if you don't have any wrapping words, departing words for us, we'll leave the floor open for either of you to give us, maybe 30 seconds of, a pitch or good vibes for the rest of the remaining of the evening.
Well, I will say 2 things. I think it's amazing that your 6-year-old has so much fire. I always say, like, you're like, And I think something that it sounds like is coming up in your household is, when can I introduce her formally to the world on social media, which is coming up more the younger. So now little kids between 6 and 8 want to be on social media. So it's like, well, what do you put? What is acceptable, right? So I always say it depends on the kid. I honestly don't think social media is. I think 8 and up, kids can get access. Meaning, what are you putting up? Are you putting up pictures? That's fine. So like, I had a client that, which is just her artwork, which is beautiful, and that's appropriate.
Right.
And it's monitored by her mother, right? And she's a beautiful artist. So it just goes back to like, what's the purpose of this? If it's something that's going to hone into her talent, then that's like, if she's a dancer, yes. Like, and that's her little thing, and you're watching it, and it's all her little friends and like people that adore, yes. But below that, it becomes a little strange, because ultimately it's adults that's on there. So you want to just monitor that.
That's why I say hashtag no, we're not.
I like that.
We're not doing that. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, no,
Yeah, she doesn't need it.
Agreed. Agreed.
And I'm picking up something, Anita, that I think is really important. When we do research and we work with parents, over and over, we find parents struggling under guilt. And they feel bad about letting their kids use screens. They feel bad about letting their kids look at social media, because there is this popular narrative in the media that demonizes kids and using social media. And we say, please, dump the guilt. What matters is that you're talking and interacting with your kids. I remember I was doing research when we had finished one research interview, when we switched off the recorders, the parent said to me, I let my daughter watch a movie. Did I damage her? I said, no. It's all media are not equal. We don't want to say that social media are all good or bad, because different interactions and different things are taking place in social media. So if you and your daughter want to look at, like Felicia said, people doing dances online, and you're discussing and conversing, that is healthy and beneficial. And don't feel guilty if you let your kid play online. We want to just say that this is healthy, normal engagement, and it's important for kids to take part in today's digital society. Much of society is online. So drop the guilt and understand that this is all part of life. What's important is thoughtful parenting and thoughtful decision making.
I concur.
It sounds wonderful.
Listen, all receive, and I'm just silently waiting for her to bust in here to say, "Hey, everybody!"
Yeah. And here's the other part: like, she's already on, like, when on social media, meaning YouTube. Oh my gosh, they don't watch TV. Y'all don't watch TV.
No, she does not watch TV. Agreed.
So thinking about expanding the perception of social media is any access to the outside world. That's social media. So like WhatsApp.
Right.
I always laugh because I'm like, mute to WhatsApp. Right. But like the WhatsApp, the YouTube, TikTok, we can go Pinterest. I love Pinterest. It's like a forever mood board. Yeah. So like all of that is social media, right? It's just, you can pick the ones that are appropriate. And as Dr. Agosto said, you just continue to navigate that dialogue, because she will be more responsible than her peers.
This is great advice. So maybe, I mean, you guys are arming my little one with more of an advantage, because I'm like, are we watching YouTube? I'm like, what is this again on repeat? Yeah. So we're not just as I think Felicia and I talked earlier when we were engaging to participate in this live broadcast. I told her I stopped watching TV. This was when we got in deep into the pandemic, because it made me feel horrible with the news, what was happening in the news. So I read a lot more now than, obviously, before the pandemic started. And I have to tell you, I feel a lot better. But now it's, now we're in, what are we watching? Teen Titan Go. Like, that's her thing. And it's like, what is this? And to your point, it's on YouTube. It's not even like, live TV. Everything is on YouTube. So it's very strange in our constant debate that we have to kind of, to your point, not feeling guilty about it, but it's an honest, realistic like growth for me as a parent to kind of like say, well, okay, I'm not, you know, too overbearing, or am I, you know, removing her from, you know, society that she's not really engaging differently. But I think she's well-rounded, but it's still very strange knowing, you know, the genesis of where I've come from. And, you know, I think one time we were talking about like Black Planet and all that, like all that whole like scene. It's like, whoo, I'm old. Like it's, so yeah, it's a very, this is eye-opening. And I hope that we were able to, you know, really gain some insight. At least I did. But it is very, 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 I'm very grateful just to have you all to come on and share.
I dropped into the chat a link, but I don't think I have access to the open chat, just the private chat, a link to
I'll copy it and put it in.
To a piece that's based off of one of our research projects. It's just tips for parents parenting with technology during COVID-19. We want to say you have to kind of relax your standards during COVID-19. And there's some tips. I don't think I can share the link, but somebody might find it helpful.
No, I did. I put it onto I copied it and shared it to our audience. So we greatly appreciate you. And seeing no additional questions, I'm going to say goodnight to Dr. Denise and Dr. Felicia. I am very grateful, and will send over, you know, notes of love and gratitude later on. So thank you very much for your time. Please remain safe, stay sane, and stay connected to us. So we look forward to talking with you again. Take good care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet y'all.
So I am left with part of my squad, and I'm actually going to bring on the rest of my ambassadors. Some of them, you may not see their faces, and I am okay with that because I am really, really proud of you all. And so you will note that part of the 11375 ambassador team is Ukai, Maza, Noah, Devin, and Jaden. What you saw on this particular episode, they designed, produced, and created it. So I just want to shout them out and thank them publicly for working through this process. They were a part of my inaugural team as the 11375 Youth Ambassador. So it was really nice to have the opportunity to work with them. And so I hope that you all enjoyed listening to what they had to say this evening. And before we wrap up for tonight, I just want to do some, a few general announcements and then close out with our video that was created by one of my ambassadors, Noah. And so, as mentioned, the Brownsville Community Justice Center is hiring. And so if you're looking for an opportunity to be able to work for a very wonderful local community-based organization out of Brownsville, please check out the opportunities. They're located in Brownsville, but the website is centerforcourtinnovation.applytojob.com. And also, I'm going to show our community announcements just in case for those who have joined us live. I'm going to show some community announcements and then we are going to close out our show. So just stay tuned.
Up.
So I want to just take a moment to, again, thank you for joining us this evening. We had a very robust discussion about the impact of social media on the minds of youth. This is actually a two-part series, which we will be having another series tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Same time, same place, all the locations where you tuned in. And so again, hope that you remain safe and sane, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you again for joining us. And now for our final video that is produced by our team member, Noah.